The steel jaws had bitten deep into flesh, and the blood trail through the sage brush told Jenny Sinclair everything she needed to know about how long this creature had been suffering. She dropped to her knees in the red dirt of the Nevada desert, her calico skirt pooling around her as she stared into the golden eyes of a wolf pup that should have been dead already. The trap had clamped around its left hind leg, the rusted metal teeth embedded so deeply that bone showed white against the matted fur. It was November of 1882, and the sun hung low over the mountains surrounding Tonopah, casting long shadows across the sparse landscape where silver strikes had brought desperate men and hardy women to carve out lives in the unforgiving terrain. The pup whimpered, a sound so human in its pain that Jenny felt her heart constrict. She was 21 years old, had buried her father just 3 months prior, and was running his general store alone despite the whispers that said a woman had no business managing such affairs. Her hands trembled as she reached toward the pup, knowing that one wrong move could send those young teeth sinking into her wrist. The animal was perhaps 4 months old, she guessed, old enough to have been separated from its mother but young enough that survival alone in this harsh country was impossible even without such a wound. "Easy now," she whispered, her voice catching on the dry air. "I am not going to hurt you." The pup's lips curled back, revealing small white teeth, but the growl that emerged was weak, threaded through with exhaustion. Jenny had walked out to check her father's old trap lines, something she did every few weeks to spring whatever remained and render them harmless. He had given up trapping years ago, but other men used these trails, and she hated the thought of animals suffering. She had not expected to find anything still alive. She pulled off her shawl and wrapped it carefully around the pup's head, covering its eyes and muzzle in a way that darkened its world and calmed the panic she could see building. The animal went still, confused by the sudden blindness, and Jenny worked quickly to examine the trap. It was an old design, the kind that required significant force to open, and her fingers were not strong enough to manage the springs. "Damn it," she muttered, then immediately felt guilty for the curse despite being alone in the desert. She needed help, but the nearest ranch was the Taylor spread, nearly 2 miles east, and she did not know if the pup would survive being moved with the trap still attached. The weight alone could cause more damage, and the pain of jostling over rough ground might send the animal into shock. The sound of hoofbeats made her head snap up. A rider was approaching from the north, moving at an easy lope that suggested he was not in any particular hurry. Jenny stood, shading her eyes against the slanting sunlight, and felt her stomach tighten with recognition. Adam Taylor, the man who owned the ranch she had just been thinking about, sat astride a buckskin gelding that picked its way carefully through the sage. Adam was 24, tall and lean in the way of men who spent their lives in the saddle, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of creek water over stone. He had been kind to her after her father died, offering help with heavy work at the store, but she had kept her distance. There was something about him that unsettled her, a quiet intensity that made her aware of herself in ways she did not quite understand. He reined in when he saw her, his gaze moving from her face to the bundle at her feet. "Miss Sinclair, did not expect to find anyone out here." "I found a wolf pup in a trap," she said without preamble. "I need help getting it out. My hands are not strong enough for the springs." Adam dismounted in one fluid motion, ground tying his horse with the ease of long practice. He approached slowly, his boots crunching on the gravelly soil, and knelt beside the wrapped pup. His hands were careful as he lifted the edge of her shawl, peering at the trap beneath. His jaw tightened. "This is bad. How long do you figure it has been here?" The blood on the ground is dried in layers. At least a day, maybe more. He glanced up at her, something like approval in his expression. You have a good eye. Most people would not notice that. He settled into a crouch, studying the trap mechanism. I can get this open, but the leg is damaged. Even if we free it, infection is likely. Might be kinder to end its suffering quick. No. The word came out sharper than Jenny intended. I want to try to save it. Adam was quiet for a moment, his hands resting on his knees. It is a wolf, Miss Sinclair. Even if we save it, it will never be tame. It is not like raising a dog. I know what it is. She met his eyes, refusing to look away, but I cannot just let it die if there is a chance. Something shifted in his expression, a softening around his mouth that might have been the start of a smile. All right then. Hold the body still while I work the springs. Keep that shawl over its head or it will try to bite. Jenny knelt beside him, her hands pressing gently but firmly against the pup's ribcage. She could feel the rapid flutter of its heartbeat, the heat of fever already building in its small body. Adam's hands moved with surprising delicacy for someone so large, positioning himself to lever the trap springs open. The muscles in his forearms stood out as he applied pressure, his breath coming steady and controlled. Now, he said through gritted teeth, and Jenny pulled the pup free the moment the jaws parted. The animal yelped, a high-pitched sound of pure agony, and thrashed in her arms. She held on, murmuring nonsense words, and after a moment the pup went limp, either from exhaustion or resignation. Blood welled fresh from the wound, and she could see that the bone, while exposed, did not appear completely broken. We need to get it somewhere clean, Adam said, standing and brushing dust from his pants. My ranch is closer than town. I have supplies for doctoring livestock. It is not ideal, but it is better than trying to carry it all the way to your place. Jenny hesitated. Going to his ranch, just the two of them, would start talk, but the pup was making small, whimpering sounds that cut through her concerns about propriety. All right, thank you. Adam untied a blanket from behind his saddle and helped her wrap the pup more securely. Then he mounted and reached down, offering his hand. Come on up. We will ride double and go slow. She took his hand, feeling the callous strength of it as he pulled her up behind him with seemingly no effort. The horse sidestepped once but settled as Adam spoke to it in a low voice. Jenny found herself pressed against his back, her arms awkward until he said, You will need to hold on to me. Use your arms around my waist. I will not think less of you for it. Her face burned, but she did as he suggested, feeling the warmth of him through his shirt, the steady rise and fall of his breathing. The pup lay cradled in the blanket between them, and Adam set off at a walk that ate up the ground without jarring his passengers too badly. They rode in silence for a while, the desert around them turning purple and gold as the sun continued its descent. A coyote called in the distance, and the pup stirred restlessly in response, some deep instinct recognizing the voice of a distant cousin. Jenny found herself acutely aware of every point where her body touched Adam's, the way his muscles shifted as he guided the horse around obstacles, the scent of leather and sage and honest sweat that clung to him. Why do you check the trap lines? He asked suddenly, his voice carrying easily despite not being raised. Your father has been gone since August. Most people would just let them be. I hate the thought of animals suffering because of human carelessness, she said. My father stopped trapping before I was born, but he never went back to collect all his sets. Other trappers have used some of them over the years. I spring what I find. That is dangerous work for a woman alone, she bristled. I manage. I did not say you could not manage. I said it was dangerous. Those are different things, he paused. I could ride out with you next time if you would like, make the work easier. Why would you do that? He was quiet long enough that she thought he might not answer. Then he said, "Because I think you carry too much alone, Miss Sinclair, and because I would like to know you better." Her breath caught. Before she could formulate a response, the ranch buildings came into view. The Taylor spread was modest but well-maintained, with a house built of logs and adobe, a barn that looked sturdy, and several corrals holding horses that lifted their heads to watch as they approached. Adam dismounted first, then helped her down with the same easy strength he had shown earlier. "Bring it to the barn," he said. "I have a stall we can use that is clean and out of the way." The barn smelled of hay and horse and the particular warmth that came from large animals in a confined space. Adam led her to a corner stall that held fresh straw and a water bucket. He hung a lantern from a hook, and the golden light pushed back the gathering darkness. Together they laid the pup on the straw, unwrapping the blanket carefully. In the lamplight, the damage looked worse. The leg was swollen, the fur matted with blood and dirt, and the pup's breathing had grown rapid and shallow. Adam fetched a basin of water, clean cloths, and a wooden box filled with bottles and tins. He knelt beside her and began cleaning the wound with steady hands. "You have done this before," Jenny observed, "plenty of times. Cattle get hurt, horses get cut on wire. You learn to patch up what you can." He worked in silence for a moment, then added, "Though I admit this is my first wolf." Despite everything, Jenny felt a smile tug at her mouth. "Mine too." The cleaning took time. The pup had stopped fighting, lying limp as Adam worked, its eyes half closed. When the wound was as clean as they could make it, Adam dusted it with a yellowish powder from one of his tins. "Sulfur," he explained, "helps fight infection. It is not guaranteed, but it is the best we have." He wrapped the leg carefully in strips of clean cloth, not too tight but secure enough to keep the wound protected. Then he sat back on his heels, studying their patient. "We need to get water into it, maybe some broth if we can manage it. Otherwise, it will die of thirst before infection even has a chance." "I can try," Jenny said. She had experience with sick animals from helping around her father's store, where people sometimes brought injured pets or livestock. She fetched the water bucket and dipped her fingers in, then touched them to the pup's nose. The animal's tongue flicked out automatically, licking at the moisture. She repeated the action, patient and persistent, until she was sure the pup had gotten at least a little liquid. "That is good," Adam said. "You have a gentle touch." She glanced at him, finding his gaze on her face rather than the pup. The intensity she had noticed before was there, but softer somehow, mixed with something that might have been admiration. She looked away, flustered. "I should get back to town," she said. "It will be full dark soon." "You will stay here tonight," Adam said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "It is too late to ride back safely, and you will want to be here through the night to tend the pup. I have a spare room. My sister used to live here before she married and moved to Carson City. It is proper enough." Jenny wanted to protest, but the truth was that she was exhausted, worried, and the thought of leaving the pup felt wrong. "All right, thank you." He showed her to the house, which was neat in the way of men who lived alone but took pride in their surroundings. The spare room held a narrow bed with a quilt that looked handmade, a dresser, and a window that faced east. He left her there to wash up while he went to prepare food, and she splashed water on her face from the basin, staring at herself in the small mirror above the dresser. Her hair had come loose from its pins, hanging in brown waves around her face, and her dress was dusty and stained with blood. She looked half wild herself. Dinner was simple but good. Stew that had clearly been simmering all day, fresh bread, and coffee so strong it made her eyes water. They ate at a rough-hewn table, and she found herself sneaking glances at him between bites. He had rolled his sleeves up to wash, and she could see the corded strength in his forearms, the scars that marked a life of hard work. "Tell me about the store," he said. "How are you managing?" She set down her spoon, considering. Most people asked with judgment implicit in the question, expecting her to admit failure. But his expression was genuinely curious. "It is difficult," she admitted. "Some of the men do not like taking direction from a woman. They will argue over prices they would have paid without question when my father was alive. But others have been kind, and I know the business. My father taught me the books, the ordering, everything. He raised you well. He raised me alone after my mother died. I think he forgot sometimes that I was supposed to be learning to be a lady instead of learning to be a merchant." Adam smiled, and the expression transformed his face, making him look younger and less guarded. "I think he taught you exactly what you needed to know." After dinner, they checked on the pup together. It was awake, its eyes tracking their movements, but it did not try to rise. Jenny changed the water bucket and managed to get it to drink a bit more. Adam brought a bowl of thin meat broth, and they took turns coaxing the pup to lap at it. The animal was too weak to eat properly, but it managed a few mouthfuls before its head sank back down. "That is good," Adam said. "Better than I expected." They settled in the straw, backs against the stall wall, keeping watch. The barn was warm despite the November chill outside, the horses in their stalls creating a pocket of animal heat. Jenny found her eyelids growing heavy, the exhaustion of the day catching up with her. "You can sleep if you want," Adam said quietly. "I will keep watch. We could take turns." "All right. I will wake you in a few hours." She meant to argue, to insist on first watch, but her body had other ideas. She felt herself listing sideways, and then Adam's shoulder was there, solid and warm, and she could not quite muster the energy to pull away. His arm came around her, careful and respectful, just enough to keep her from sliding into the straw. "Sleep, Jenny," he said, and the use of her first name, soft and intimate in the darkness, made something flutter in her chest. She slept. When she woke, gray dawn light was filtering through the cracks in the barn walls, and she was lying in the straw with a blanket tucked around her. Adam sat cross-legged beside the pup, hand feeding it tiny pieces of meat that he had torn into manageable bits. The pup was eating, its jaws working carefully, and the sight filled her with a relief so profound it was almost painful. "You let me sleep all night," she said accusingly. He glanced over, and there was a wariness in his expression, as if he expected her to be angry about waking on his shoulder. "You needed rest, and I wanted to see if it would eat." "It is eating, it is." He could not quite hide his own relief. Still a long road ahead, but this is a good sign. She sat up, running her hands through her tangled hair. "I need to get back to town. The store opens at 8. I will ride you back after breakfast. We can take the pup with us if you want. You will need to tend it regularly anyway." The idea of caring for a wolf pup in her small living quarters above the store seemed absurd, but she found herself nodding. "All right. Yes." They ate quickly, and Adam fashioned a carrier from a wooden crate padded with straw and cloth. The pup lay quietly inside, its golden eyes watchful but no longer glazed with pain and fever. The leg was still badly damaged, but the swelling seemed marginally less, and there was no smell of rot. The ride back to Tanapa took just over an hour, with Jenny once again seated behind Adam, the crate balanced carefully in front of him. She was more aware this morning of the impropriety, of how it would look when they rode into town together at dawn, but she found she did not care as much as she should have. Let people talk. They had been talking about her for months anyway. Adam helped her set up the crate in her storage room, a small space behind the store that stayed warm from the stove in the shop proper. He showed her how to change the bandage, how to check for signs of infection, how much to feed. I will come by this evening, he said. Check on how it is doing. You do not have to do that. I know I do not have to, I want to. He met her eyes, and there was that intensity again, the thing that made her pulse quicken. If you do not want me to come, say so, but otherwise I will be here, she swallowed hard. I would like that, you coming, I mean. His smile was small but genuine. Good. He left, and she turned to face her day, exhausted and rumpled and happier than she had been in months. The pup, which she had started thinking of as Smoke for its gray-brown coloring, survived the first week, then the second. Adam came every evening without fail, helping her change bandages and coax the animal to eat. He brought meat scraps from his own kitchen, bones for gnawing that would help keep Smoke occupied, and a quiet patience that balanced her tendency to worry. They fell into a rhythm. He would arrive around sunset, and they would tend the pup together. Then she would make coffee, and they would sit in her small kitchen and talk. She learned that he had inherited the ranch from his father 5 years prior, that he ran cattle and broke horses to sell to the mines. He learned that she had taught herself to read from her father's ledgers, that she loved stories about faraway places she would probably never see, that she was terrified of failing and losing the store that was her only means of supporting herself. November gave way to December, and the Nevada desert turned cold. Frost painted the windows in the mornings, and the wind that blew down from the mountains carried the promise of snow. Smoke grew stronger, eating eagerly now, attempting to stand on 3 legs and whining when the injured leg would not bear weight. Adam examined it carefully one evening and shook his head. The bone did not set right. It will never work properly. Jenny felt her throat tighten. But it will live. Oh yes, it will live. But it will always limp, and it will never be able to run with a pack. This wolf will not survive in the wild. She stroked Smoke's head, feeling the animal relax under her touch. Over the past weeks, the pup had bonded to her in a way that was both touching and troubling. It whined when she left the room, settled immediately when she returned, ate from her hand with a gentleness that belied its wild nature. Then I will keep it, she said, Jenny. Adam's voice was careful. People are already talking about me coming here every night. If you keep a wolf like a pet, that will cause even more talk. Let them talk. He was quiet for a moment, then reached out and covered her hand with his. His palm was warm, calloused, entirely engulfing her smaller fingers. I am not saying do not keep it. I am saying that the talk will happen, and I want to know that you understand that. I understand. She turned her hand in his, lacing their fingers together. Do you care about the talk? Not even a little bit. His thumb stroked across her knuckles. But I care about your reputation. I care about making things harder for you. You make things easier, she said softly. You make everything easier. He leaned forward, his free hand coming up to cup her cheek, giving her every opportunity to pull away. When she did not, when she leaned into his touch instead, he closed the distance and kissed her. It was gentle, questioning, and when she made a small sound in the back of her throat and kissed him back, it deepened into something that made her entire body feel warm and alive in ways she had never experienced. When they broke apart, she was breathing hard, her face flushed. Adam rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. I have wanted to do that since the day I pulled you up on my horse. I have wanted you to do that since then too, she admitted. I just did not know it at the time. He laughed, the sound low and intimate. We are a pair of fools then. Perhaps. He kissed her again, and this time there was no hesitation from either of them. His arms came around her, pulling her close, and she wound her hands in his hair, discovering that it was as soft as it looked. Smoke made a grumbling sound from its crate, and they broke apart with matching smiles. Even the wolf thinks we should slow down, Adam said. The wolf is probably just hungry. The wolf is always hungry. They fed Smoke together, and then Adam left with a final kiss at her door that made her knees weak. She floated through the rest of her evening, unable to stop smiling, feeling like a girl despite being a woman grown. December deepened. The first snow fell on a Monday, light flurries that dusted the buildings of Tanapa and made everything look cleaner and more beautiful than it had any right to be. Smoke had graduated to hobbling around her storage room, investigating every corner with puppyish curiosity, despite being nearly 6 months old now. The injured leg dragged, but the pup was adapting, learning to balance on 3 legs and use the 4th as an occasional brace. Adam proposed on the shortest day of the year, the winter solstice, when the sun barely cleared the mountains before beginning its descent. He came to the store after closing, as had become his habit, and found her in the back room playing with Smoke. The wolf pup had grown attached to a length of rope, and she was engaged in a gentle tug of war, laughing at the determined growls coming from the animal. "Jenny," Adam said, and something in his voice made her look up. He was holding his hat in his hands, turning it nervously. For a man usually so confident, the gesture was endearing. She stood, brushing straw from her skirt, and waited. "I know this is fast," he said. "I know people will say I am taking advantage or that you are making a mistake, but I do not care what people say, and I need you to know how I feel." He took a breath. "I love you. I love your stubbornness and your kindness and the way you fight for things that cannot fight for themselves. I love that you would risk scandal to save a wolf pup, and I love that you run a business in a town full of men who think women should stay home. I want to spend my life loving you if you will let me." He dropped to one knee, right there in the straw and dust, and pulled a ring from his pocket. It was simple, a gold band with a small blue stone that caught the lamplight. "Marry me, Jenny. Let me take care of you and let me learn from you and let us build something together." She could not speak past the lump in her throat, so she nodded instead, furiously, and held out her hand. He slipped the ring on her finger and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Then he was standing and she was in his arms, and he was kissing her with a fervor that made the world spin. "Yes," she finally managed to gasp out when they broke for air. "Yes, yes, yes." Smoke barked, a high-pitched sound that was part excitement and part confusion, and they laughed together, holding each other in the dim warmth of the storage room while snow fell softly outside. They married in January of 1883, in a simple ceremony at the small church in Tanapa. Jenny wore her mother's dress, altered to fit her, and Adam wore a new suit that he clearly felt uncomfortable in based on how he kept tugging at the collar. The preacher was old and kind, and he did not comment on how the bride kept a 3-legged wolf on a leather lead throughout the ceremony, or how the groom kept smiling at said wolf with something like fondness. Jenny closed the store and moved to the ranch, though she kept the building, leasing it to a young couple who wanted to try their hand at mercantile work. The income was small but steady, and it felt good to have that safety net even as she began learning the rhythms of ranch life. Winter on the ranch was beautiful and brutal in equal measure. Snow piled against the buildings, and the work of feeding animals, breaking ice in water troughs, and keeping everything running never stopped. But Jenny found she loved it, loved the physicality of the labor, the way her body grew stronger, the satisfaction of collapsing into bed each night beside her husband, warm and exhausted and content. Adam taught her to ride better, to rope, to read the weather in the way clouds gathered over the mountains. She taught him to keep better books, to negotiate prices with the merchants in town, to plan ahead for lean times. They complemented each other in ways that surprised them both, finding that they worked as well together as they fit together in the quiet darkness of their bedroom. Smoke adapted to ranch life with surprising ease. The wolf spent most of its time following Jenny around, but it tolerated Adam and largely ignored the horses and cattle. The ranch dogs, two cattle dogs named Buck and Bell, were less certain about the new addition, but after a few scuffles to establish hierarchy, they reached an uneasy truce. Smoke could not run with them on their work, but the wolf would lie in the sun and watch, head on paws, as if understanding something had been lost, but accepting it nonetheless. Spring came late in 1883, the snow lingering well into March. When the thaw finally began, it was dramatic, with creeks running high and the desert blooming overnight in a riot of wildflowers. Jenny discovered she was pregnant in early April, and the joy on Adam's face when she told him was something she knew she would remember forever. "A baby," he kept saying, as if he could not quite believe it. "We are going to have a baby." "You do not have to sound quite so shocked," she teased. "I think we both know how these things happen." He pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. "I just never let myself hope for this much happiness." She understood what he meant. Sometimes she would wake in the night, nestled against his warmth, and feel a wave of gratitude so strong it brought tears to her eyes. This life, this love, had snuck up on her when she was not looking, growing from a moment of compassion for an injured animal into something vast and unshakable. The pregnancy was not easy. Jenny suffered terrible sickness in the early months, and the summer heat of the Nevada desert was oppressive even in the relative cool of the ranch house. But Adam was patient and attentive, bringing her cool water, rubbing her feet when they swelled, taking over more of the physical labor without making her feel weak or useless. Smoke, now fully grown into a rangy wolf with a distinctive three-legged gait, became even more protective. The animal would lie beside Jenny for hours, as if standing guard, and would growl at anything that approached too quickly. Adam joked that they had the best guard in Nevada, one that would probably scare off intruders by sheer strangeness if not by actual threat. Their son was born in December, during the first major snow of the season. The birth was long and difficult, attended by the doctor from Tonopah, and an older ranch wife named Mrs. Patterson, who had delivered half the babies in the county. Jenny thought she might die from the pain, but Adam held her hand through it all, his face white but his voice steady. And when it was finally over, when the thin wail of a newborn filled the room, she felt a rush of triumph that eclipsed everything else. "A boy," the doctor said, placing the tiny, wrinkled creature on her chest. "A healthy boy." Adam was crying unashamedly, his hand gentle on the baby's head. "He is perfect." They named him Thomas after Jenny's father, and young Tom proved to be a demanding but ultimately healthy infant. He ate well, grew steadily, and seemed utterly unfazed by the unusual household he had been born into. Smoke was fascinated by the baby, approaching the cradle with careful steps and sniffing gently at the small occupant. Jenny watched nervously the first time, but the wolf simply licked the baby's hand once, then settled on the floor beside the cradle as if claiming responsibility for this new member of the pack. "I think we have a nursemaid," Adam said, and there was wonder in his voice. The years that followed were full and rich in ways Jenny had never imagined possible. Tom grew into a sturdy toddler with his father's dark hair and his mother's stubborn chin. He learned to walk holding onto Smoke's scruff, and the wolf tolerated the indignity with patience that surprised everyone. The ranch prospered, and Adam hired 2 hands to help with the expanding operation. In the summer of 1886, Jenny found herself pregnant again. This time the sickness was less severe, and she felt strong throughout, able to work almost until the day her daughter was born. They named her Alice, after Adam's mother, and she came into the world squalling with indignation, red-faced and furious in a way that made both her parents laugh even through their exhaustion. Smoke was older now, moving more stiffly, the injured leg causing more pain as arthritis set in. But the wolf remained devoted to the family, particularly to the children, and could often be found lying in a patch of sun, while Tom and later Alice used the animal as a pillow for their afternoon naps. Life fell into a rhythm of seasons and growth. Tom started school in town, riding in with Adam several days a week and staying with the family who leased the store. Alice grew into a wild little thing who loved horses and dirt and seemed to fear nothing, much to her mother's simultaneous pride and terror. The ranch expanded until Adam employed 5 men full-time, and they built a larger barn and added rooms onto the house. Through it all, Jenny and Adam's love deepened and matured. They had their disagreements, their moments of frustration and exhaustion, but underlying everything was a bedrock of respect and affection that never wavered. They still sat together in the evenings when work was done, her head on his shoulder, talking about the day or sitting in comfortable silence. Smoke died in the autumn of 1889, quietly in the night, curled up in the spot by the fireplace that had always been home. Jenny found the wolf in the morning and wept, mourning not just the animal but the chance encounter that had changed everything. They buried Smoke on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a view of the mountains and the desert beyond, and Tom placed wildflowers on the grave with a solemnity that broke his mother's heart. Smoke was special, Jenny told him, holding him close as he cried. Smoke brought your father and me together. We will never forget that. Adam carved a marker from wood, simple but sturdy, and planted it at the head of the grave. It read only Smoke Friend, but it was enough. Life continued as it always does. Tom grew tall and rangy like his father, with a gift for working with horses that made Adam proud. Alice remained fierce and independent, declaring her intention to run the ranch herself someday, and brooking no argument from anyone who suggested girls could not do such things. Jenny and Adam watched their children grow with a mixture of pride and bittersweet awareness of time passing. In the winter of 1891, nearly 9 years after that November day when Jenny had found a dying wolf pup in a trap, she and Adam sat on their porch wrapped in blankets, watching the sun set over the snow-covered mountains. The children were inside, arguing over a book, their voices carrying through the window. Smoke's grave was a gentle mound in the distance, marked by the weathered wooden cross. You ever think about how different things would be if I had not found Smoke that day? Jenny asked, leaning into Adam's warmth. He was quiet for a moment, his arm tightening around her. All the time. I was riding out to check the north fence line. I almost turned back earlier because I thought rain was coming. If I had, I would not have been there when you needed help. And I almost did not go out that day. I had inventory to do at the store. But you did go out, and I did ride that way, and we found each other because of a wolf pup who should have been dead. He turned to look at her, his face older now, marked by sun and wind and laughter lines, but still handsome to her eyes. I think we were meant to find each other, Jenny, one way or another. You do not really believe in fate. I believe in us. However it happened, whatever brought us together, I am grateful for it every single day. She kissed him, soft and lingering, and tasted snow on his lips. I love you. I love you too. Tom appeared in the doorway, Alice behind him. Ma, Pa, are you coming inside? It is cold out here. In a minute, Adam called back. Your ma and I are watching the sunset. You watch the sunset every night, Alice said, but she was grinning. Yes, Jenny agreed, and we will watch it every night for as long as we have them together. The children rolled their eyes in the way of the young who think their parents are being absurdly sentimental, but they smiled too. And when Jenny and Adam finally came inside, there was hot cocoa waiting and the house was warm with firelight and love. Years continued to pass in the way they do, marked by the small milestones of life. Tom married at 21, bringing home a sweet-faced girl from Goldfield named Sarah who fit into their family as if she had always been meant to be there. They built a house on the far edge of the ranch property, and Tom took on more and more of the daily operations as Adam's back began to feel the accumulated toll of decades of hard work. Alice, true to her childhood declaration, showed no interest in marriage or settling down in the traditional sense. She became known throughout the territory as one of the best horse trainers around, with a gift for gentling even the most difficult animals. She traveled to various ranches, hired for her expertise, and Jenny was proud of her daughter's independence even as she worried about her being alone. But Alice was not lonely, that much was clear. She had friends scattered across Nevada, and she came home often, full of stories and laughter. She taught Tom's children to ride, as fearless and capable as she had always been, and the kids adored their adventurous aunt. Jenny and Adam became grandparents 4 times over. Tom and Sarah had 3 children in quick succession, 2 boys and a girl, each one a delight and a handful in equal measure. Alice eventually settled down with a quiet woman named Margaret who ran a small horse ranch near Virginia City. And though there were those who disapproved, Jenny and Adam welcomed Margaret into the family without hesitation. Love was love, they figured, and their daughter was happy. That was what mattered. The ranch continued to prosper under Tom's management, and Adam finally allowed himself to step back, to take on the role of advisor rather than primary operator. He and Jenny spent their days working in the garden she had planted years ago, reading in the evenings, visiting with their expanding family. They were fortunate, and they knew it. In the spring of 1905, Jenny turned 44 and Adam turned 47. They were no longer young, their bodies marked by work and time, but they were healthy and comfortable. The store building in town had been sold years ago, the money invested in the ranch and in ensuring their children had what they needed. Life had settled into a gentle rhythm that felt earned. One warm evening in May, Jenny and Adam rode out to Smoke's grave, something they did several times a year. The wooden marker had weathered to silver gray, but it still stood straight and true. Wildflowers bloomed around it, purple and yellow against the brown earth. 23 years, Jenny said softly. Has it really been that long? 23 years this past November since we met. 22 years married, 9 children and grandchildren between them. Adam smiled. That wolf gave us quite a legacy. It was not just Smoke, Jenny said. It was you choosing to stop and help. It was both of us choosing to try to save something everyone else would have given up on. Maybe that is what love is, Adam said thoughtfully. Choosing not to give up even when it would be easier. Choosing to try even when success is not guaranteed. Jenny turned to him, this man she had built a life with, and felt the same flutter in her chest that she had felt that first night in the barn, watching him feed a wounded pup with infinite patience. If that is what love is, then we have loved well. We have, he agreed, and we will continue to. I plan on loving you for at least another 40 years, Mrs. Taylor. Only 40, that seems a bit short. He laughed and pulled her close, kissing her temple. You are right, make it 50 or 100, however long we get. They stood together on the hill as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, the desert spreading out below them, the ranch buildings small but solid in the distance. Smoke's grave was a reminder of where they had started, of the chance and choice that had brought them together. But it was the life they had built since, the family they had raised, the love they had nurtured through seasons of hardship and joy that truly mattered. The wolf pup had been the beginning, but it was only the beginning. Everything that came after, everything they had become together, was the real story. And it was a story that was still being written, in the laughter of grandchildren, in the quiet moments of companionship, in the way Adam still looked at her, as if she was the most remarkable thing he had ever seen, in the way her heart still quickened when he smiled. They rode back to the ranch as twilight gathered, hand in hand, the horses knowing their way home. Lights glowed in the windows of their house, and they could see Tom's family arriving for the weekly dinner they always shared. The sound of children's voices carried on the evening air, and Jenny felt a sense of completeness that was almost overwhelming in its intensity. "Home," Adam said simply. "Home," she agreed, and it was.